Hi, this is Chase Ferguson again with Liberty University as a Master's in History student. This is History 530. Today we're going to be talking about fundamentalism versus modernism, and more specifically the Scopes trial. The Scopes trial took place in 1925 in Tennessee. It was basically officially known as Tennessee versus Scopes, and this basic way to try and understand this is that there's a battle going on in America, and that battle revolves around the religious and Christian precepts that most Americans live by and expected people to kind of govern themselves accordingly. We're under attack by a new movement known as modernism, and part of that included things like Darwinism, evolution theory, that type of stuff, specifically in education. So before we get any further into this, it's important to go ahead and state that historians should always be honest and objective in anything that they report, write, or record. And we're going to do our best to do that here as well, because it's the right thing to do. This case is very interesting because of what we said, it being a battle between fundamentalism and modernism. And there's this new era coming to fruition that's going to challenge everything that was previously held kind of sacred. There was a law known as the Butler Act, and the Butler Act forbade education theory from public schools in Tennessee. So if you were in a public school or a publicly funded school in the state of Tennessee, you were not allowed to teach evolution theory or Darwinism. So there was this teacher. He was like a substitute school teacher, and he had taught in several science courses, filling in, and he'd use a textbook that covered evolution. So there was a trial, and what occurred is the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, decided to represent Mr. Scopes and defended him for teaching evolution in his science courses that he substituted. And the very high-profile lawyer that came to prosecute the case from the state's perspective was William Jennings Bryan, a congressman and a well-known presidential candidate who had ran multiple times for president, but to no avail. But needless to say, he was a strong and vehement fundamentalist in America, and he definitely represented that crowd very, very well, and he took it upon himself to come represent the fundamentalist perspective in this trial. Scopes himself never even took the stand. There was a monkey brought down in human clothes that was used to try and belittle Bryan's argument and things like that. But Bryan was never able to deliver his final rebuttal and remarks. And of course, like we said, Scopes never took the stand. So the trial was a little bit interesting, and Scopes was eventually found guilty and charged $100. However, he was actually, I don't know if the word is acquitted, but he was, the charges were dropped due to the fact that there was a court error or trial error. And the law in Tennessee remained in effect. The Butler Act forbidding evolution theory from being taught in school was forbidden up until 1967. When the state legislation changed things. So having said that, this was a big deal from the 1920s until the 60s, and I think what it represents is more important than necessarily the facts of the case, because what it represents is the battle that was ongoing for the hearts and minds and the souls of Americans, and it revolved around Judeo-Christian values set forth in fundamentalism school of thought versus the modernist school of thought, where education, evolution theory, Darwinism is what's going to take the main hold in education for America's youth. And so many people did not want to see that happen, which is certainly understandable if you're a person of the Christian faith. So William Jennings Bryan was very concerned that the identity of America may be ultimately lost if we allow this type of stuff to be taught in public schools. So that being the main concern, the Scopes trial played a major role in the battle between fundamentalism and modernism in the 1920s America, and it continues to this day to illustrate the war between the two camps that was happening in America, and in essence is still going on to this day. Needless to say, Christian principles and the creation story told in the book of Genesis, that God made the heavens and the earth and everything in and on them, has been accepted as truth for generations and generations and generations of Americans, and it was an absolute truth, and that was the basis of the defense lawyer's attack on William Jennings Bryan, and basically trying to discredit him, even using illustrations such as Jonah being swallowed up by the whale or the giant fish, and then being, of course, spat back out after he agreed to do God's will. And he challenged him and tried to use anecdotal evidence to disprove or discredit Bryan and his beliefs and fundamental values, whereas Bryan and his wonderful oratory skills attempted to simply defend the Christian principles and traditions based upon their own merits and their face value, and how it's always been such a wonderful thing for society, and how Christian living is really the epitome of kindness and friendship and that sort of thing. So the battle was taking place. It was a big public spectacle. Many people came to see it. It was very, very hot. The courtroom was packed, and the judge even took the trial outside, making it more of a public spectacle. And with the monkey and the human clothes and that type of stuff too, it got very interesting. But needless to say, I think the Scopes trial is a very good illustration of just how the word isn't violent, but strong the sentiment was on both sides, and how far people were willing to go to prove their side, prove their point, and try to push their own agenda. The fundamentalists being there to defend what was already a tradition, and the modernists there to break through, proverbial glass ceiling and bring new waves of education to American youth. If you have any questions about this presentation, any questions about fundamentalism versus modernism, or William Jennings Bryan and his his prosecution of the Scopes trial, feel free to leave a comment below in the comments section. Thank you guys, and have a great day.